Well,
So
what I said was
$3 million of my
she
money
wouldn't
into
have
this drone delivery business. So the drone delivery is the future, mate. That's what I'm putting all my. I'm selling my house, putting all the money into drone. Oh, we're live. Oh, okay.
And Bruce is driving because our lights go out, might go out any second. And we have now learned that if I start the thing and then have to redo it, it just all falls apart. Now, Bobby is not joining us. This is the first thing I have to say. He had realised late in the day that he had to go to Amsterdam for Amsterdam.
Or is that an excuse?
Maybe he'll turn up. I don't know. And funny enough, the very act of saying he was coming on caused another drone delivery company to say they wanted to come on as well. So I've sent them a link, and I'll see if they come. But I don't know. I haven't told you chaps this, but I will see. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening. It's been quite a big weekend delivery. Bobby's going to come on next week, so we can perhaps park some of the argument we were just having before we went on air. It was quite an amusing and informative and heated argument for later on or for next week. But let me share a screen, and I am sure, I'm pretty certain I've seen these before. That these are not such a new thing, and I think I've seen them in free flight models. But Bruce, I don't know. Have you seen these sort of props before?
I've seen single-bladed props with counterweights and things which are more aerodynamically efficient, but this is I don't know that trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, because this is the Zipline thing, isn't it? And they reckon they're hovering way up in the sky and dropping down a cat basket with your goodies in it. Well, you shouldn't be able to hear much from that distance anyway. So why would you go to this level?
And the delivery cat's quite a thing, isn't it? Quite an innovation to train cats to do the final piloting.
It's marketing hype. All the drone delivery companies seem to be wrapped up in. Well, the job of a drone delivery company at the moment is to convince investors to part with their money, not to actually deliver product. And this is a good example of it.
There is a point here with the noise, because I agree with Bruce, and this is the point that the man have made, that because you're dropping it down on us, on a winch, that actually you're not going to hear that much noise. So if you're inside, you're not going to hear it. But I think what they're thinking about is any noise that you can reduce off the drone. It just stops NIMBYs, because NIMBYs, they're going to be NIMBYs because they're NIMBYs, and they'll complain about anything. So even the smallest amount of noise, even though it's less than the birds outside, even though it's less than the traffic going past, anything you can do to stop an argument against drones, you're better off, because you'll have those people that are just anti-drone. So I've seen some of them, like even on Twitter, that, it's like first it's gonna knock out an airliner, and then you send the video and the links and that, go, it's not going to take an airline out of the sky. They go, oh well, it's going to invade my privacy, and then you have to go through that, and then it's, oh well, it's going to be noisy. At the end of the day, it's people want to find a reason to complain about something and be against it once they're against it.
Talking about reasons to complain, here's Philip.
The Dutch soccer team.
And in the comments, Johnny RC said he's seen 2 delivery companies' commercial ads on YouTube. I'd be interested to know who those were, Johnny, and which part of the world you're in. I'm going to guess America. We've just mentioned the props on the Zipline thing. I suppose I should use a better word than thing. But what did you think of those propellers, and what do you think of that whole Zipline offering with its, as Bruce eloquently put it, cat cage coming down?
I think it's a clever solution to the localized noise and localized spinning big cutty things. Bringing that down and offsetting it, it's a nice, easy control method to accurately bring in something smaller rather than trying to bring in the whole massive vehicle. And leaving the big vehicle further away, that helps with noise as well. So I do like the thought process they've put behind it. Pretty much everything Zipline does is pretty cool. So as far as that prop, it's not a new concept in aviation, but it's definitely a new concept in the world of delivery drones. And That's pretty cool. If anyone's seen a Fenestrum on the back of a Dauphine 2, a helicopter rotor blade at the back, they have the props in groupings so that they're not all exactly even all the way around, and it's the same sort of concept that you get different frequencies of noise generated, and therefore you end up, like as Mark Robert quite nicely explains, the same volume is there, but it's spread over different frequencies, so therefore it sounds less and it's more like white noise, which is really cool.
There is one problem though, even though it may be mass balanced, it's not aerodynamically balanced. You notice that the thrust vector is offset from the shaft. The actual center of thrust is offset from the shaft, so you will get vibration from propellers like that. There's nothing you can do about that.
The vibration you get is actually nowhere near as bad as you would think, though. I mean, there's been even full-size Cessnas and things like that people have done single-bladed props on, counterbalance props, and it doesn't shake the motor off like you would sort of expect, especially on a flexible mounted motor like on a Cessna. It actually does work surprisingly well. Yeah.
And the thing that people haven't made a lot of fuss about is those aren't pitos or antennas. Those black rods sticking out are part of their detect and avoid system, acoustic system.
That's the microphone system.
Yeah,
they're not white canes.
They're not white. Yeah, white canes. We might as well take a guide dog then, and when the lead goes slack, you're at low level. But yeah, so that's a pretty clever system as well. So they have put a lot of technology in there, and they're absolutely nailed. I thought they were mad. It's a mad thing with the parachute delivery thing to start with, and I've been proved utterly wrong.
Again.
So again, still always.
I'm doing a reaction video to that Mark Robber thing because he makes the false assumption that because Zipline have been so very good servicing a niche case in a third world country over low population densities and long distances, that's going to translate into urban suburban drone delivery. And I tell you now, it's certainly not.
Well, I think you'll notice that the methodology that they've used is completely different for the urban drone delivery. Like they've gone from a fixed wing parachute drop to a multi-copter with this little mini copter and precision landing capability on the mini copter, and dealing with the noise. Like they have realized that there is a significant level of difference, and I think you need delivery companies to actually have that experience that nearly said the wrong one, that Zipline has had in doing that wide area delivery, to actually look at what are the shortcomings of this, and they've clearly done that by the fact that they've gone for a completely different methodology for in the short range delivery. I'm still not sure how their methodology that they've done with their little pod is quite going to scale, because it seems like a very expensive drone. There's a lot,
and it could be noisy in and of itself. You look at those side vector thrusts and the forward and reverse vector thrusts to get enough to cope with wind. They're going to have to spin pretty quick. The small props, they're going to make, and they've got turbulent airflow because they've got grills over them. They're going to make a noise.
Depends if they use some smarts in how they do their fans as well. I mean, most ducted fans are incredibly noisy, but you can actually make a pretty quiet ducted fan as well.
You can, but they've got grills which will create a turbulent airflow over the fans, and that's going to create the noise. Which push a wing, and these little cinequads with the props that blow down and suck air in over a strut. That creates so much noise. You can't avoid that. It's just physics. So, and if you're dealing with a reasonable crosswind, they might have to blow that thing sideways at like 20 kilometers an hour. That's going to take a lot of wind.
Yeah.
I immediately thought you're gonna want to put it into. It's gonna basically, your aircraft's gonna want to come into the hover into wind, because you are going to be contending with, you can't have a crosswind on that, and how long is the battery going to last?
You can have a crosswind on it. That's the beauty of the system. It's got a prop front and back that can go either way, so it can push sideways, it can yaw. It can pull, like it's fully The only access
It's going
it
to use
doesn't
a
have
hoon a
control
lot of
over.
energy when it's doing that, isn't it?
And that's a lot of
No,
that's
it
a lot of
doesn't.
extra payload too. That's subtracting from your actual payload capacity and extra complexity. I mean, one of the things that I've been doing some simple sums. Take the DJI Matrice. What are batteries that are $350 a pop, and they recommend a 300 cycle life for the batteries. So that's $1 a flight. Just for batteries, just amortizing the capital cost of the batteries, and that's just on a Matrice. You get something that's bigger, it's more capable. You are going to be spending a lot of money on these overheads. Props have a finite life, motors have a finite life, your ground station equipment has a finite life, and to really run a drone effectively, you can't just get by with one battery. You might need 3 or 4 batteries. If you want to charge at less than 1C, you might need 6 batteries. So all these costs add up, and it's not the actual cost of putting electricity in it and flying it backwards and forwards. It's the total capital cost amortized, and we don't know what the lifespan of these drones is going to be. And the more complex you make them,
10 years.
you know.
Well, I know, man, it's quoted 10 years.
Yeah, but they haven't had one fly for 10 years, have they? So you can't guarantee that.
Well, you
The
can
Zipline
run a
are
battery through- you can run a battery through cycles to do continuous aging testing and stuff like that. Chances are they're not using, cheap Chinese lipos like DJI use as well. So
I would say with DJI as well, they'll put a lifespan on stuff that's
conservative.
it's going to be very conservative because it's then getting you to buy the new battery again. So I think
You think regulators won't do the same? Regulators will put a conservative lifetime on it. They'll put in also to get basically.
Regulators don't do it like that. Regulators will let them write a whole bunch of stuff with their proven tests, with their evidence, and they'll approve whatever the operations are based on that.
Yeah, but that didn't work for Boeing.
Because Boeing didn't have the data to actually back up, they got slack on that. But in the standard process that Boeing should have had to have dealt with, they would have had to have the evidence that went through that as well, and they would have had to give that all to the FAA. The old self-approval method that Boeing had is a little bit weird, but in normal life, you do your manual, you do all your stuff, you put all the evidence in, put all the work in, present that to the authorities, whether it's, CASA here in Australia, which, CASA work on evidence. They're pretty good. I mean, I do have complaints about CASA occasionally, but overall, CASA are pretty bloody good, especially compared to CAA UK, which are incompetent. But anyway.
Amazing. Have you seen all the spelling mistakes in the latest sets of document? I know spelling mistakes is a little bit petty, but when they go around pulling people's operator certificates for having spelling.
It's because they text the documents between departments, and you don't use vowels.
To WhatsApp them.
Yeah, but remember that all the UAS sector guys, I think, at the CIA at the minute, don't actually work in the main office. They're all dotted around the country, working from home half the time. So
I don't know, but anyway, just jump back to the Zipline thing. In Zipline's defense, as to the maintenance, they're really excellent with the stuff they do with the parachute dropping, with the app that they have for testing the wings and servos before they go, and the way they have all the gear on a rack. So in fact, they have perhaps a little bit of an issue for regulators in that it's probably not the same aircraft, because it might be a right wing coming from Tuesday's flight, a left wing coming from last Thursday's flight, and a body coming from wherever. They move all the parts around, and they're really, so that's perhaps a modern agile would be a buzzy thing, I suppose, to say, way of putting the drones together. And I'm sure before they dispatch, I'm sure there'll be a bit like that.
The authority. I don't think that'll bother the authorities at all, because at the end of the day, what they're approving is a system. They're not approving an airframe.
Okay.
So yeah.
So
I mean, it's a bit. I mean, the batteries.
What are we approving here? Are we approving 2 aircraft in a formation flight, or is it a single flight once it's down there?
You're
with the
approving
other
a system.
A system. Okay.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, when it comes to stuff like that, there'll be a ConOps proposed, and they'll do a SORA accordingly, etc., etc. Like, it'll all be done with the JARIS way, and it'll be done as a system. So yeah, I don't see that there'll be regulatory approval issues as long as they've got the data to prove that the thing's going to stay in the air. Yeah.
Strangely enough, no one has ever been killed as a result of the recreational use of multi-rotor drones, and the regulations keep getting tougher. The data is out there to say that they're data aware and data driven. It's certainly not the case in some areas.
Not in recreational, they're not, because they're not driven. Sorry, go for it.
I was going to say, in JARUS says that when a drone crashes, there will be an explosion. So JARUS, whoever wrote that, is seriously flawed. It's
it depends. When you quote JARUS, though, just like with the SORAs, with the JARUS stuff, there are a lot of things written using the methodology that are garbage, but that doesn't make JARUS garbage, if that makes sense.
It kind of. Well, I'm sorry to disagree, because I know I'm no expert, but when they say that it means that when a drone crashes, it will explode. There's no if or buts. Worst case is an explosion. That is sheer. What's the word I'm looking for? Poppycock. It's poppycock, because
demonetized.
Right, I've been in the model flying for years, and I bet Bruce has seen this. Bet Gary has seen this. Ian may have seen this, and I bet you've seen this, Phil. When a model plane crashes, and even if it's got a petrol engine in it, it doesn't explode. I've never seen a model aircraft land and explode. Never. Not in all my days.
My very first control line plane that I built, literally, I used. I completely buggered up the build, and I was a rather young child at the time. Back when control line was the coolest way to control an aircraft. It went up, it went down, it went boom, and it literally exploded. It was awesome. It was like so worth it. That invisible alcoholic flame that you get from. And then the bolts are all burnt. And it was
I've never seen a glow plane go up except when it's being started. I've seen turbines explode, but then you got hot bits of metal and turbine gas aviation.
That's true. I've seen a turbine explode.
Yeah. If it's a model jet is the only thing I've seen go with like a proper plane.
Yeah. Well, hang on, Mark. You've just rather unproved your point. At least four of us have seen something go up.
You won't see a multi-rotor explode because it's not got a jet engine with jet fuel on it. Do you know what I mean? JARUS says no matter what, if you crash, you will explode. That's what it says in the text. It literally says.
Which text are you saying there? Because I'm pretty
sure
you're actually probably quoting a specific SORA.
Well, if I'm misquoting it, I will apologise to them. But otherwise, no, because lipos, when you crash, a lipo doesn't burst into flames. It doesn't explode. It might burst into flames because of the chemical reaction that happens. It doesn't do it because it doesn't go bang and bits everywhere and people falling over dead because of it. That doesn't happen from a life.
It's a deflagration.
You've got to remember that the same people that wrote whatever that is that you said there are probably the same people that are trying to destroy the electric car industry by specifying that certain electric cars catch fire and forgetting the fact that petrol cars on a daily basis catch fire. And there's people getting killed in horrific ways in petrol cars on a daily basis, but let's ignore that and say this is bad. It's the same logic.
But it amazes me that it exists. These people that write these rules are way smarter than me. They must be, right?
I wouldn't bet on it.
How can they have that fundamental error in there?
And they were hired on their credentials, not on anything else. Clearly, they're the smartest people around.
Well, clearly they are, because they wrote JARUS, so they've got to be the smartest people around. Because it's like the defining thing is when a drone hits a plane, right? And we are told this by everyone, and I'm willing to bet JARUS has it as well, that everyone will die and it'll burst into flames and it'll be a big explosion.
The thing is, when you're doing when you're doing an assessment, you can use what information you want basically to get the result you want. JARUS is a methodology, and you can use the assure data in your thing and basically quote that no one's going to get killed, and that's acceptable data. The problem is that there are people doing stupid things, and I have a severe dislike for the commercial drone industry in general, and by commercial drone industry I mean your people that went down, bought a DJI and they're now doing surveying and photography. They think they're a professional, and they want the rules to be as complex as possible because they're trying to protect their interests. They're the ones that are writing what you're talking about. They're the ones that are pushing drones crashing into airliners doing damage when the evidence is to the contrary. Like, they're the ones pushing all of this sort of stuff. It's not actually the regulators that are pushing this. It is actually commercial drone operators that are pushing this crap.
Yeah, we see it. Well, it's twofold, isn't it? It's pilots' unions, as we've seen in Dublin, and it tends to be commercial operations, usually close to regulators, that are doing it to try and close the door behind them. Which is, I just think it's
very short-sighted. It's extremely short-sighted.
As I say, if you're good enough at your business, you don't need to lock the door behind you. If you've got the expertise, you know what you're doing, you can sell your product anyway. And someone coming in behind, I mean, it's not particularly easy to operate in the drone industry anyway. If you're just doing drones, most people do it successfully. Are doing it as a add-on to an existing business. So,
or they're very focused on it and they've scaled up.
Yeah,
but it's the mum and pop operators that are trying to dominate the industry when they can't dominate the industry because they're mum and pop operators. They're not going to be running the whole industry, and they just want it difficult because they don't want the real estate agent to be able to go buy a Mavic and do his own real estate shots, because that takes away money that I was going to earn, when that's actually not true. Because there's no guarantee they were going to get that contract anyway. So.
Funnily enough, because all of this is exactly what's happened in South Africa. The people shut the door behind the new guys coming up, as it were. And guess what? The biggest industry or making use of it is real estate here. And every realtor's got a drone and taking photos completely outside of the regulations here, because they would have to spend 300,000 rand to be properly qualified. And that's the other thing they did here. The training schools made the cost of training astronomical. And it's rubbish. The standard of training, we are digressing here, but the standard of training here is appalling. It is. And I do know somebody that when the man from the CAA came around and said, "Where's the emergency exit?" he put a triangle and wrote emergency exit on the side of a Phantom. So that's where we're at. Not fit for purpose, not in any way safe, considered, and just like many. Go on,
in Australia, from the training side of things, we used to have multi-copter and fixed wing, and obviously within RG Pilot we were building, quad planes, etc. And all of a sudden, a training organisation in Australia decided to write a training program for quad planes, and now we have a separate category called powered lift. Now, anyone who's flown a quad plane knows that you take off, you push forward, and it just flies forward. That's the amount of training you need to know the difference between a multi-copter and a fixed wing. There is no other difference. If it needs to weather into the wind, RG Pilot does that for you. Now, okay, there might be some incompetent things written with, something else that doesn't do that as efficiently, but that's a reflection on the autopilot system, not a reflection on the need for extra training. So all of a sudden, we've got all these people who have been developing this stuff for years, flying this stuff for years, has to go out and pay to get an extra category put on their license for powered lift to be allowed to either flick a switch or push forward and have the thing automatically transition. It's not something you need extra skills for. You've already got the fixed wing.
That's interesting, because a friend of mine, he actually went to Australia and flew the Quantum F9 in Australia for a little bit, and he had to go when he got there, do the powered lift version.
Yeah,
and
which is nuts. But then again,
that means he's saying, does that mean that if you went through and did the powered lift thing, that then you're not qualified to do fixed wing or multi-rotor, just powered lift?
Correct.
There's no money. There's no money in this drone business unless you're doing training.
So you could be the powered lift man. You could
training, like my entry into this industry was helping Victorian UAS training actually, start, then I realised I hate paperwork and I hate training people. So that clearly wasn't for me. So Matthew Herbert, who runs that, is still doing it, but they keep changing the rules on the training schools. So unless you're one of these training schools that is just full of pen pushers, I mean, they actually are flyers, and they train people how to actually fly. They train people on how to use Argipilot and blah blah blah. Like it's actually a really good school, but there are schools out there that are just there to try and monopolize the whole thing, and they're the people we should be grumpy at, not actually so much the regulators, because the regulators are pushed into a corner when all of a sudden a well-written, i.e. meets all of the standards training course gets thrown on their thing with a whole bunch of risk assessments to justify why suddenly we need a new category. They become liable if they don't go for it if something happens, and they're so paranoid of if something happens that they don't have much choice.
No.
I think we need, Philip, is we need to set up a global company that's there to actually be the fountain of knowledge that regulators go to, and then you can just say, no, that's a lot of bullshit, and then they've got a tick box there of it's been actually checked and assessed as bullshit.
Yeah, unfortunately, the companies already exist. They're called Quinetic and companies like that. Unfortunately, unless you're what is deemed as a prime in the military space, you're not an expert. That's just how it goes. That is unfortunately the way the industry is set up, at least in the West. If you're not a Boeing, a Raytheon, E3 Systems, Airbus, whatever. And that's where Ashore has actually been a positive thing, because I mean, Ashore could have gone the other way too. I mean, they're a big government organisation that got set up to do regulatory tests. Thankfully, they've got really good crews who actually are doing things well, but it really comes down to who's actually running the joint, whether it's actually going to be doing positive things, or whether, change directors and all of a sudden it could be very different.
If I was in Australia, I'd get that powered lift certification, and then I'd charge myself out $50 a time just to flick the switch for other operators that don't have that. Money making.
And there are people that do that, which is actually illegal under Australian rules, but there are people that get their full coverage and then go out and sublease it out to other people, and gets messy.
Comment, Gary. It's just because there was a comment made in the, on the YouTube comments by a guy called Cliff. I just wanted to address it because he's been sat there for a while. He was just saying
this one.
Yeah, there's a counter to that, which makes the entire sense to it. Or the hanging basket part of it. If you were doing the opposite, which is to land the drone, that's considerably more complex. Then you're bringing the noise down to ground level. Then you're having to have AI, which holding that computer power on board, and having to.
You have to have computer vision, which isn't AI,
yes.
But anyway.
Well, but you can have AI behind computer vision often to actually work. Because with Google, they were doing. There was essentially kind of a bit of an AI thing behind it, because it was. They captured all the different objects in a garden, like the trampoline and this, so you can actually identify individual things, and I must avoid that. But
the identifying is quite easy. I think there's an awful lot of AI systems, even like on an ESP32 with a little camera. So putting a box around something and calling it a trampoline, I think, is relatively easy. What you then choose to do with that information is another thing altogether.
But here's an idea. Why not take that Zipline idea with the little box they lower down and get rid of the drone, put wheels on the box and trundle it around the footpath?
Oh, I know someone that's just done that. I do know.
It's very successful.
Yeah.
I think there's a good reason not to do that. Number one, I know people making the comments, people hacking delivery drones, etc., etc. I'm pretty sure companies like Zipline are encouraging people to try. That's sort of what you do at this stage. I mean, we definitely encourage people to try and do various horrible things to our systems because we want to find those.
It's not the electronic hacks, though. It's the guys with the surf casting rod that deal with the wing drones.
Well, what I'm waiting for with Zipline and others that lower items down is I want to see a cat at the bottom playing with the delivery parcel. So as it comes down, there'll be a cat or a dog. I reckon at some point in the future,
I think a dog's going to struggle on the Zipline one because they've got their protected areas that they're actually working off.
Right.
Dogs aren't so good at getting up there, but I can see a cat doing it.
Ooh, I might join TikTok, and when the drone drops a thing down, I'll tie it to the back of the Uber Eats bike and just let them go for it.
but again, you imagine a dog. So, I've seen it where they lower these things into gardens or whatever, front or back. It'll either be a dog that's nothing to do with the property that will come rushing across and grab it, or it's going to come in the back garden and expect. You imagine a dog getting hold of that and then running off.
Running off, getting caught underneath the power line, and the main copter just getting dragged to the ground.
Precautionary landing.
I mean, it's a great idea, and I think it's really clever. And I think for a lot of places it may work, especially.
Sorry, Cliff, we've offended Cliff.
But
that's what Ian was saying.
But he likes
it, because it's like that Space 1999 thing, the thing that never got to the year 2000 because it was very average.
What are you talking about?
But the frightening thing about that, hang on, pull up a sandbag. Just been talking to the children at school for various things. I was trying to get across them that I could remember when I was 10 that the year 2000 was 23 years away, and now the year 2000, well, it's 23 years in the past. And I don't know how time will go by.
I was describing to my son, who's actually in the next room here, coming on to talk with a whole bunch of old blokes and whinge and rant and rave like old men, which sort of describes this group well. Sorry about that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. We're not disputing that.
I identify as a 14-year-old, so I don't care.
When it comes to delivery,
there's a few comments coming through on hacking and GPS blocking and all of that sort of stuff. I would like to address that. I think, unfortunately, the Counter-UAS companies have done an exceptional job of pretending that their equipment works and the public believe it. This situation at Dublin at the moment is just... I'm actually struggling to comment on Twitter on it because I don't want to be rude to the people at the airport, and they are showing a level of incompetence that makes Gatwick look good. It's just unbelievable. Their whole claim that they have this system, but yet they've got no idea where this supposed drone is, and yet there's no one that's actually really verified that they've even seen a drone. They are operating on paranoia and fear, and they're being sold crap by these.
Can I get you to hold that thought? Because wait, there's more. Just before we went on air, and Ian's got a thing, but just before we went on air, now, if I was slick, I would have been able to do this in a slick way, but I'm not. This was released by Hoven because waivers for unmanned flights outlines economic scope, but counter. So we've had counter drone. What's counter UAP? It's UFOs. It's unmanned aerial phenomena. They're even trying to get in on that. So CUS is a real thing, i.e. the drones, well, perhaps UFOs exist. That's also fine.
Well,
but they're going to try and make money out of it.
They call it a UAP, to be honest. I mean, what happened at Gatwick and what happened at Dublin, they are UAPs.
Yes.
The end of the day, someone has seen something. It could have been a light on a crane or a helicopter. They don't know what it is. Therefore, it's unknown. It was up in the air. Therefore, it's aerial. And it's some sort of phenomenon. So yeah.
But they're looking for but that's specifically looking for things coming from space.
Yeah.
So that's like
because humans aren't good enough at killing each other already. We need to worry about aliens.
Well,
Yeah.
remember, there was that, was it? Jupiter was seen and thought to be a drone by someone.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
it's a valid fear. It's a valid fear because people are stupid.
Yeah, it chased that policewoman, didn't it?
Yes, I was a policewoman, wasn't it? But I mean, I wrote an email to a friend today bemoaning the fact that I saw a counter-UAS company demonstrating its amazing ability to see ADS-B signals over a hill. Oh, would that be by having a receiver on the other side of the hill, like we did, chaining them together here in South Africa 3 or 4 years ago to make a 500-kilometer corridor of ADS-B receivers that could do? I mean, it's all these. So the claim
is good for you.
Go on.
We're about to release a counter UAS package available for anyone that has an Android phone. I mean, it's otherwise just known as a drone ID app, but apparently that's now counter UAS. Because you know, all of these drones are actually broadcasting their position, their takeoff position, the user's position. It's something that normal people can just pick up with a normal phone. And yes, companies are now calling that counter UAS. It's not counter UAS. We are putting the equipment on our UAS to tell you where we are. But anyway, so yeah, Drone Share mobile app will be coming out soon, and that will have the ability to accept the drone ID information and then send that to our app so that we can you know,
count the aggregating it.
Count them. It's not counter, it's counter.
Counter, that's a good dodge for getting around advertising.
You're counting the number of things.
Counting UAS.
So here's a question then for us all, right? So we've got this beautiful counter UAS system. There's a light in the sky. Do you believe it's a drone or is it not? Because your device says there's nothing there, but I can see something in the sky. But the device says but there's a drone in the sky. But is it? What is it?
But that's going to shut down airports even more because they say it's a drone without remote ID. It must be a bad actor. Shut the airport down.
It must be a bad actor, and it could be even worse. It could be a UAP from space.
Yeah,
We've done no testing of throwing UAPs from space into side windows of 737s.
Yes.
It could be me, an OAP with a UAP.
I have another sandbag story from me, which will be very quick. I have been working at a tower in radar when people in the tower, the glass bit at the top, have said, "Have you got anything on the radar to the north that's really, really moving around?" No. Are you sure? No. Come upstairs and have a look. We all went upstairs and had a look. Bloody hell, there was something in the sky to the north that wasn't on the radar. And so I was Givener in North Devon when what do we used to call them? A UFO. We put it in the logbook anyway. So, and that was people. Look, we were all looking at the sky, pretending to be professionals. And we had no idea what this thing was. And it was a big light in the sky. It probably was a planet. Who knows? I mean, it wasn't a drone in the 80s. Or it could have been, I suppose. But it was a something. So yeah, lights in the sky. It's just, but the narrative and
fly balloon.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could easily have been one of those. But where I wanted to sort of circle this back round to Ian was, it's funny enough, a lot of the UFO people are quite excited about like Gatwick and stuff like that and wanting to know more. And I think, haven't they inadvertently with their freedom of information requests found some interesting stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So obviously they've got a different. Well, you've got a mix actually, because everyone thinks that the people into UAP are all into aliens and wanting to prove that way. Actually, no, but a lot of them are just very balanced individuals that just got an interest in these events for the fact that often it's actually new military planes that are being tested, or as we've seen, it might be Chinese balloons or whatever else actually being used to get intelligence over here.
Or American from universities.
Yeah. So what they're interested about is a lot of them is just getting to the facts of what had gone on. But they have a different, because they have a different approach. They've got different questions in the head. It reveals different data. Because obviously, if I'm questioning, I've always got it as a thinking from a drone user's perspective of thinking, can it find the rain and all this other stuff? I'd be thinking facts, and then sometimes that clouds you and takes you down specific routes we're questioning, where somebody that's got a completely different motive asks something completely different, and you think, bloody hell, why didn't I ask that? So yeah, it's quite handy that you've got groups of people with different motivations that are looking at. And then even now, actually, I've had followers now in the UAP community with doubling that's going on, because again, the moment it's like, well, there's no proof there's a drone. It's like, oh, maybe there's something special going on there. Whereas I'm just thinking, no, it's just probably another balls up. I think at this point, there was one thing I was going to say. Oh yeah, we should do it for another week, but Philip had alluded to it. Just for anybody that's seen last week's show, especially as I was getting quite worked up, although it turns out I was right. The Canadian impact study, because any Canadians now, I've just got to say this to you, shame on you, and shame on you. 3 years that's been out, and if you look at it, they couldn't find front windows for an airliner. So instead of putting the test on hold or waiting, they got side windows for an airliner, tested on that. And if you even read the end of the report, it says, because we've used side windows, this entire test needs redoing. So it's useless.
And unfortunately, they published that, and then it gets used in a SORA as evidence, and it perpetrates through there, and that is missing. These first tests, when they're done wrong like that. I mean, I've actually reached out to some friends I've got at Qantas to see if I can try and find some front windscreens, because we've got to redo this test. It's absolutely ludicrous to use a side window as a front window. They're designed for a
house window.
Impact. Exactly. Like it's like a front windscreen on a car. It's amazing the size of rock that can get thrown at your car and it just deflect off. But if that window was vertical and get the same thing, it would just go straight through. That angle matters. It's just...
Hang on. Didn't DJI do one where they got a plane cabin?
I'm not sure it was DJI.
That was the Chinese.
It was
the Chinese regulator. So yeah. So there's that one. We showed video for that last week. So first off, I just thought, well, this is nonsense because we've seen it there. Ashore have tested it. I've gone back to Ashore. The FAA have fully accepted Ashore's findings on that. So the Ashore science says that will not happen. And Ashore are happy with their science. So it's only Canada that's done it wrong, that's admitted that it's done it wrong. And yet people are using it, which to me, it's mental. And then, as Phil said,
it's actually negligence. Because let's go all the way back now to drone deliveries. The organizations like Mission Go and people like that and Zipline, who are doing actual medical deliveries that are actually saving lives and doing really cool stuff, they are having to jump through hoops to prove their systems are safe, based not against the Ashore data, but based against all of the other rumors and innuendo out in the industry. But
you just got through telling us that the regulators listen to the data, and now you're telling us they don't.
And you just said, you said earlier, JARUS, that, if they're using that data, yet again, proves that JARUS is as much good.
When you're talking JARUS, just make sure you know who you're talking about, because you're not talking about the JARUS group. You're talking about people writing SORAs.
Yeah.
And the other ones slipped my mind. Within that framework that are writing crap. That's like saying that we should ban all journalists because journalism has forgotten how to journalist. Well, it's not the actual process of journalism that's wrong. It's the fact that everyone is no longer doing it, which I'm sure there's someone to my that way would agree with. Just make sure the target is right, because the people that are doing the wrong stuff here are actually, again, commercial operators overly complicating things to scare people out of their industry to protect their own asses. And they are using the system the way it's not designed to be used. So we need to call that behavior out and just encourage people to use correct data, use the assured data. Don't use this Canadian bullshit. I'm sorry, language. And don't use the, what was it? Was it the University of Michigan that did the plane stuff into the moving wing, which was
Dayton.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think we should do just a bit more of a deep dive into that at a later date, just because we could compare the assured data to that, and there was a number of issues with the test that you could pick, even stuff they not picked on myself. I looked at it and just thought, well, that's crap. I mean, just to give you an example, when you're firing drone without a prop on. Now, if you get a drone, in fact, here we go, solo motor. One of the most points that actually would hurt you, and you can actually feel it's the tip of the motor there where it's metal. Now, if you've got props on, that's never going to impact. But this is what had actually done scratches when they're done on the wing, which were only scratches anyway. But it's because of that. So basically what they're doing again is they're saying test methodology won't allow us to do this right because we're firing it out of a cannon. So they say, well, the props are break on being fired. So they do it without, but then your test is compromised. You should not be doing a test where you're compromising the test because of the way you're going about it. But the very least you could do is you put the prop on, you cut off the props, at least leave the end on there, and then you've got an impact that's genuine.
Let's be radical. How about you just put a whole drone, they're not that big, and just use the whole drone? Like, well, at the end of the day,
they say with cannons that it deteriorates, so that's why the Chinese
the cannon can be built to whatever you need the cannon to be built to. Like, I'm sorry, but telling a bunch of guys that have got funding that they're not allowed to build a bigger cannon, I don't think so.
This is the problem. It's always you've got this budget and you've got this date, and these companies that are being or organisations, because sometimes be academic organisations. They're just thinking about the money. This is a project for us to do. And really, I just don't understand when the integrity is tested. Because if someone has to test something, I'd say, well, I can't. What you're telling me to test it, it's an invalid test. I'd say if I'm testing that, well, either I'd walk. I'd say I'm not doing it. I'd say if we are testing it, there's got to be a mitigation written at the end so people understand all the compromises we put in there. But yeah,
you already said they did put that in, but people don't quote that.
They didn't put it all in. They put the change the windows, but like you say, there was the angle of the window, and it's then the fact that the props aren't on, which I don't think was mentioned at all. But that really does, because that was shown with the Chinese impact, because the prop hits first, that actually crumples and takes some of the impact as well. So it is one of the factors in the drone impact that they missed.
So being silly, but why would you fire it out of a cannon? Because that's misleading from the get-go. Why not just fly it flat out into said object? Because
you can't get enough speed.
You need 200 knots. I mean, for it to be a realistic thing. So 200 knots is sort of we're flying in lower altitudes speeds. Look, at the end of the day, the whole thing is a little bit ridiculous in as far as, let's be real, if I'm flying in a helicopter or I'm flying in a small Cessna, the concern I have is the fact that, here I go attacking the regulator now, why are acrylic windshields still legal in light aircraft? Birds go straight through them, drones go straight through them, everything goes straight through them.
Basically, what you're saying, Philip,
straight through them.
Very valid point. You're saying that is the root cause problem. It's not even the drone being there for going for the windshield. You're allowing such big windshields.
Yeah. So it's all about the airliner, isn't it? Because that's their main fear, the airliner, right? I have a question. If an airliner is at 400 feet in the middle of nowhere, isn't it already screwed and got bigger problems than a drone?
Well, I think they're only talking about the 400 feet for airliner around an airport. That's why they've got all these massive exclusion zones and this, that, and the other. Everywhere else, the 400 feet is about light aircraft. But for some reason, I think it's people see light aircraft as someone else's problem because light aircraft pilots are not the majority of the population. In fact, they're actually a very limited percentage of the population. There's more people fly drones than fly light aircraft. There's more people drive cars than fly light aircraft. And there's far more people fly commercial than fly light aircraft. So if you're wanting to get the most fear factor out there, then why do you talk about light aircraft? It's pointless because people don't care about it.
We know all about that,
yes,
chat.
Yes, that's correct. That journo in New Zealand was a prick.
Hang on, let me just write down that definitive answer there. There's a definitive opinion there from Lord Rouse.
That was my opinion. It does not represent the organisation I work for. Blah 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 blah.
Etc. etc. etc.
As we've touched on Dublin, and this is kind of all related now.
Yes.
We've got onto airliners. Do you want to put on the video updates?
During events at Dublin Airport this week saw a dramatic twist as the Irish Independent quoted the chief of the airport authority, naming the existing counter-drone system, "It is not Aeroscope." The system was named as D-Drone. This is odd as the system is capable of detect and triangulating both drone and pilot. This suggests the airport bought the software without the full set of sensors or something is going very wrong. The system can be configured in a cost-saving manner where it only detects a drone but does not locate it, nor the pilot. The behaviour of Dublin Airport suggests they're often pretty much clueless where the drone and pilot are. Although the DAA that manage the airport have told the press they have a robust monitoring system, radio enthusiasts have recorded the ATC comms which you're about to hear, which tell the truth.
So it has to be reported by a credible source, which would involve a controller, a pilot, or anybody who works on the airfield, really.
Anybody works on the airfield.
Want to keep an eye out for anything in particular while we're on the transit?
Yeah, I mean, we don't actually have an idea of where it is at the moment, but yeah, if you have any information at all, sure, pass it on.
The rule is after the drone sighting is that we stop operations for 30 minutes. It's already been quite a few minutes, so about another 20 minutes, and that's if we don't see any further drone sightings.
To add to the farce, the airport used the term drone defender when referencing the new jammer. This happens to be the name of the drone gun product which D-Drone sell. Either this is coincidence or Michael O'Leary is going to be happy.
You have effectively a kind of a laser gun.
Arm the laser! We are a go.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the
Very
video
well.
representation of exactly what's gone on this week. So the real concern is you've had the airport saying we've got a robust detect system. You've seen it there in writing that they've told the press. And then you've heard the ATC recorders. And those are the recent drone sightings. But I've spoken to radio operators, and that has been going on for years, that exact same process. So they have a hard limit burnt in. Use anyone that's staff. So you heard that. Anyone that's airfield staff.
Cleaners down
something they think is a drone. They close for 30 minutes. If anyone else sees something and thinks a drone in that time, the 30 minutes resets. But there isn't a process of saying, is there a drone there? Isn't there? Let's just reopen again. It seems to be, if someone's seen it, it's 30 minutes. And they're just thinking, let's wait for the battery to go down, assuming it's a drone. But that is the lack of a proper process there. They should be having, or they should have had, a proper invested counter drone with all the sensors. They should know, and that should be feeding the decision making. But we're seeing what they're saying to the press and what their own staff on ATC are saying completely contradicts. And I don't know which other than.
Well, it's such a. It's almost a topic I don't want to talk about because. Without blowing all our own trumpets, I bet we could make a really a proper system now and think about how we'd lay it out, how we'd set the sensors up, what we need. It wouldn't take much. It wouldn't.
There's companies that already do a good job, and there's companies like, I better not mention names. They're Australian. that sell stuff through British Telecom. You know, there's companies like that that really are just they're snake oil, and it's the best way to say it. And they are detecting what DJI drones, and they are jamming DJI signals. They're not like, and their whole, you know, gun thing, like, it's just a big blast of block everything that comes by, which is fine on a DJI or something like that, but it does not work against a significant percentage of the drones that are out there. This whole thing of DJI has, you know, 80% of the market, blah 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 blah.
That's also wrong.
Actually, not true by any
Yeah, it
stretch
isn't
of
wrong.
imagination.
It is wrong.
Most of the drones that are out there actually are RC only, have no GPS on board whatsoever. And okay, you might defeat the thing, but they just fly off into the sunset. Yeah, or your racing drones or whatever. They don't necessarily even have an RTL. They don't have an auto land feature. They just fly off somewhere. I mean, like, I understand that they're basically trying to scare drone users into thinking that they can detect them, and so therefore they're trying to stop the ignorant drone user from doing something. And from that point of view, I sort of support where they're coming from, because telling everyone that actually they don't have the technology to stop all drones is quite an admission. But you only have to look at Ukraine to know that they don't have the technology to stop all drones, because both sides would be using that technology and there would be no drone strikes. And clearly they are. And a lot of those drones are commercial off-the-shelf drones or variations of such. So clearly the technology doesn't exist. So when someone on LinkedIn decides to, you know, go to war with us on saying that their system is different to everyone else's and challenge us to a barbecue, look, I would love to if I vaguely believed it, but I don't have the time and effort to set up an attack on a barbecue that is, we're clearly going to win, because we're the enemy, we're the bad guy. We set up an attack according to what we feel
Our
like.
rules. Yes.
You know, it's our rules. It's not the airport's rules. The airport can't say you're only allowed to fly your drone in from this direction so we can detect you properly. Like, I mean, let's
yeah,
be
that
real.
guy, I know exactly who you're talking about, and he is making such big claims.
Yeah,
it's like great, and I wish we somehow
we
magic up the
only
money.
use it at classified defense places. Cool, tell them that we'll come and test it, because we talk to all levels of defense. I mean, on multiple countries. So I'm pretty sure that if they've got it installed at any country that we're not enemies with, that we could do it. And if they do have it installed at countries we are enemies with, then I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, but he's talking about, but then it's I suppose it's the continuous circle of this industry, you know, dropping in urban canyons and other buzz phrases into things. It's like, oh, here we go again. You know, it's you haven't, and being able to shoot down stuff over see stuff over the hill. It's like, no, you can't. Physics doesn't let you unless you've got something over the hill.
Woodpecker, mate.
Woodpecker. Well, yes, true. Let's bring that back.
I mean, one thing's for certain, they could definitely be doing better than they are, and it definitely doesn't look like they've put the investment in there that they need to detect. And the very fact they're talking about, the very fact they've said we can detect, we just can't do out because we can't shoot them down. It's a nonsense narrative. And as the comment there made earlier, I think once you're shooting things down, you know, assuming it's someone that isn't some evil genius that's set up to deal with that, you're putting the drone out of control, and then there's going to be consequences from that. Which again, I think it's why the airport is saying, go.
The tower, when you look at Dublin Tower, and you look that most of the city is to the south side of that tower, let's say the threats come from that way, and I don't know what power output those things squirt out, but they probably just squirt out well, Bruce probably knows better than me, but just RF noise on every ISM frequency they can. So people's garages are going to open and close. The cars aren't going to start. The pacemakers are going to switch off.
Garages, because garages do like to have a coded message, but it will muck up people's Wi-Fi during their favourite Netflix time viewing, and that will cause a lot of noise. So
yes, but you can't be on a tower. High up in the air traffic control tower, firing RF into a city. You can't be doing that.
Well, I suspect what they'll do, I mean, if they had the proper setup, which it obviously doesn't look like they do because the way they're acting just suggests otherwise. If you had the proper setup where you've got the pan tilt zoom head and that, and you've got the thermal and you can see stuff, you can have an automated jammer, and at least that's pointing where it is. But my worry and the very fact that they said drone defender, that's the handheld gun. And then I don't think it's even going to be someone on the tower. I think they'll have people on the perimeter. They're giving them that, and they're giving them the power then to shoot radio jamming. That can come with GPS jamming. So they're talking about changing legislation there. Normally, when you're doing that, it's when you're thinking about adding on, like being able to jam the GPS. So if it went that full, they gave them both capabilities. I'd be particularly worried because the training says, zap it with the radio jammer first. If that fails to stop it moving, go for the GPS jammer. But obviously, if you're shooting at something that isn't a drone, well, obviously the radio thing's probably not going to
keep moving.
And then you're going to go to the GPS, and that's where I think there's more of a concern of what's the consequence going to be.
What I really like at the moment is reading the comments. We've got translations for Ian being pushed by Cool Cat as he speaks. Thank you, Cool Cat.
Real time, we've employed him as the official translator.
Toilet rolls and t-shirts, the best anti-drone thing I've ever seen in a sports stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about shooting drones down, this week, Bruce, you have upset the entire American nation with your summation of what happened to that Reaper in the Black Sea. You had some unhappy AI-powered EMP. You won't beat my spark gap transmitter, MTV. So how did you upset the American nation, Bruce? Just illuminate people that didn't see
by
that,
suggesting that perhaps the Americans weren't following the rules with their drone. Not only were their BV lost without a spotter, but they didn't get out of the way of the Su-27. And it says in all the rule books, every country says unmanned aircraft must always yield right of way to manned aircraft. And it's even in the ICAO rules that you have to do that. So if they didn't get out of the way and that Su-27 hit them or disabled them, it's their own fault, because that's what the rules say, and the rules would not be wrong.
Yes. And did we all see the I can't say it, Barika, or however you say it? Did we see that one manage to do the avoiding action and correctly? He just turned hard, and that was that. They couldn't keep the pipper on it. That we couldn't stay with it. So I should think an awful lot of that's been going on down there over the last little while. Now, I've completely forgotten what else I wanted to talk about, which is probably no bad thing. It's no bad thing. Well, I wanted to ask Mark all about his swarm, and why aren't we seeing his swarm live on air right now?
Well, at the minute they are. Well, one, the weather here is just horrendous at the minute, and two, they are going away. So the swarm is all packed, and is due to go to someone for some testing. So it's all packed away. So they're not going to be around for about a month, I think, or so. I mean, when we get them back. I'm going to see if I can get something done with them, and we'll try and live stream it. But it now means, of course, light is going to change here very quickly, very soon. But they've just got to go away for some testing. It's great. It's a great little drone. We actually took one out in the recent 55 mile an hour winds just to see how they would handle it. So we took one out, and my God, it whizzes around like a beautiful little thing. The weather did not bother it at all. We've taken it out in the storms that we've been having, the heavy rain. It just sits there and takes it. It is a fantastic little thing. It really is. And it's like sub 400 grams, which is just bonkers. It's just fantastic.
We all saw that Red Bull fight, and I saw there was more than an FPV drone hanging off the side of that thing. I saw those as well. And what about your rover, your delivery rover? That, I must admit, that excites me more than the Swarm.
The delivery rover, that's taken 2 years to appear. It's just because the basic proving that we were right, and so you have your test chassis. We went out and did loads of testing, making sure that obstacle avoidance would work and it could do what we wanted. And then it's like, right, now we've got to build a bigger one that actually can move from A to B, and is like it's still the prototype. There's going to be 2 versions. So the version that's human controlled fully, and then we're going to have one that's self-driving for enclosed areas. So it's designed for parks. So if you think of like a leisure park, and they're going to have their own restaurants and food places, and it'll be automatic to drive around because it's an enclosed area, so it's easier to have them doing that, and it'll know its route better, and it can learn that route better.
Now, do you use equipment from that dodgy dealer in Australia at all, or are you using more professional equipment?
Ardu trolley.
Ardu trolley.
Well, all the proof of concept stuff was done with the dodgy dealer from Australia.
Dodgy dealer, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's all moving ahead. There's slightly different ways of doing things. It's a test chassis, so we're still testing, but it's proving to be really nice, and it's really funny to watch people. As we drive it around. And people have stopped and gone, wow, what is it? We've already had that. We've had a couple where it was driving, we were going along the path around a roundabout and everything, and someone literally pulled over, came back with their phone and started taking photos and stuff and asking questions. So it's had a little bit of great reception already. I mean, now the hard part begins, though, as you look for investors, because to make it go forward, you've got to have investment. You just, you can only pour so much time of your own time into these projects, and it takes a long time and a lot of resources to build the machine. I mean, people go, oh, it's easy to do. Well, if it is, go and do it then. You know what I mean? It's
a huge market. Huge market in Australia. An esky with wheels that follows you down the beach with beer in it. That's fantastic.
Especially up at Bathurst. I mean, an esky that follows you around the mountain.
I mean, don't get me wrong, right? I think there's room for all kinds of delivery systems, be it the drone, be it the urban rovers. There's great opportunities out there for a great mix, and it will be a mix. But it's just very hard to going from a concept idea to going, how to go to the next stage is proving the tricky bit at the minute with that. And it's just about finding, like I say, it's going to need some investment from somewhere.
Oh, look out. Louis here now. We're in trouble now. Are you using the dual GPS RTK gig for your on your thing?
At the minute, it doesn't need dual GPS because the version that's designed for urban areas is actually human driven. So you've got all your cameras and you'll have your GPS. I mean, RTK is a way to go. We'll see how the testing goes. We can only go so far with what we've got. So, it's all about testing what's best for it at the minute. So we're working up towards it, but it's not RTK at the minute.
Philip, are you moving more into the rover, ground vehicle, boat space, do you think? Is there more of a mix of that coming, or is it still drones?
I suppose for us, we're sort of a little agnostic as far as what type of vehicles. We've got plenty of rovers that are using our stuff, lots of boats. We've obviously got our own little jet ski that we cruise around the bay here with, which is pretty cool. The Here 4 that we're about to release actually has everything on board to actually run a full rover. So you don't need a cube, you just need the GPS, and you've got servos out, the whole lot out.
You've got servos out on it as well. Quick, find one. You're not at work, are you? Find one on the bench. Show me this. No, but you're not at work.
The prototypes we have here are sitting on Sid's desk, and he's actually working on them at the moment. So, Yes, but anyway.
So is Zipline using RG carrier in that thing they dropped down?
RG
I won't comment on what Zipline's using, but it's not us.
Yeah. So that so what other use would that? So I could use it for a boat, or I could use it for a vehicle.
Use it for whatever you feel like.
But why did you? But aren't you've just removed some of the gyros and stuff? Really,
no. Well, it's a single gyro, single Excel, single barrow, RM3100 compass, dual band RTK GPS, dual core processor. It's got the same processing power that a Cube Orange had, or Cube Orange Plus has. Yeah. So
it's basically it's less redundancy, isn't it? That's the only thing you're losing.
Yeah. No, but that's
but I mean,
like
when
back to the
you're
future.
With a rover, like if you're going to failsafe with a rover, I mean, one of the options with the rover is stop.
Yeah. Wait for someone to throw you out.
Yeah.
No, I'm not having a pop. I'm just trying to. I'm just trying to get my head around why you do that. Did it not cost you that much more to do that?
Because it's not DJI.
we're trying to make sure that people that need cheaper stuff can afford to get good stuff. Because, I mean, we're the first to admit our stuff is not exactly the cheapest on the market. And you know, we got to the point of designing the Here 3 Plus, and we had that much computing power on it. We thought, well, all it needs is the barrow added, and you've actually got everything you need for a basic autopilot. So why not add an extra connector for all the PWM?
That's a good idea.
That's what we've done. And because it's got the drone ID on it, it's got Bluetooth, two-way Bluetooth. The first versions will just have the drone ID firmware for the Americans, but then we'll do an open source two-way Bluetooth on the thing. So you'll have your comms and everything on that as well. So yeah.
And England in 2026. Oh, I'm not allowed to say that because there's some words on the document that it's coming to England in 2026. But anyway,
yeah. Oh, so you've got some secret document, have you?
I didn't say it was that word. The word was giraffe.
I've heard they're trying to sort it out for 2026. They're trying to decide how to bring it to us, but
no, they've decided.
How they're going to justify it and lie to us would be the interesting bit. So UK will get remote ID. It's just they've not decided how to tell us we're getting it in the lie or the bullshit arena to justify why they're going to bring it in.
I just wonder if they're going to do the pilot open to everyone again, because that's where it just falls down. If you said remote ID, but we're not going to give that to everyone, fair play. But I feel if we do go down the same route, it's not going to be a happy ending.
Thanks, Dean. I found it. Some throttle on. No, you don't have to. Well, I'll open to that. I have an opinion.
Just use Autoland.
Depends what aircraft.
Let the thing do it all for yourself.
Gills and Ron use flight controllers. It depends on the aircraft.
Yeah,
it depends very much on the aircraft. If it's a nice aircraft that glides well, you can do it without throttle. But if you're flying something perhaps like a highly aircraft with a lot of drag, if you don't have some throttle on, then the approach may be quite steep and you may have difficulty flaring at the bottom. So it just depends on the plane.
I mean,
and if you are in something like an X8 and you've got reversible thrust, just come in steeper. It's much more fun.
I mean, I've got a video on YouTube of my Air Titan landing without any flight controller. And I literally put down the remote control and it lands itself. And it has nothing in it. It's all about the setup in your aircraft.
Yeah, I don't know where
unfortunately, that's a skill that seems to be lacking a little bit these days, is the actual setup of the aircraft. It's like, why does the autopilot not fly this thing properly? And so, have you flown it manually? Oh, no, I can't do that. The thing's installed, the CG's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, how about you fix that?
Yeah, I'm testing a plane at the moment, which is really bad. Everyone's reviewed it and said, oh, it flies great, but they're all flying it with an autopilot. And I always trim my models out manually first. And it's terrible.
Yeah, they really do mask any problems that you may have built into the aircraft very well. And that works.
It's a bit like a 737 MAX.
Exactly.
Is this certified by Boeing on it?
To fly a little over the stall. Yeah, I think if you're new to it, Dion, the big catch out that if you're flying purely on RC, and Bruce is far more qualified to talk about that, is if it's a windy day, you'll rush past yourself going downwind and you slow down, and when you come around the corner it will stop flying. Because
No, it's when you're going into wind and you turn downwind, it stops flying.
Yeah.
That's really fun.
Anyway, get a simulator. You can learn it all firsthand without breaking anything.
The understanding of airspeed versus ground speed is a critical thing that still so many people don't understand. And like we get questions of people setting up their stall speeds according to their GPS speed. And it's like, yeah, GPS speed is irrelevant on an aircraft when you're coming into land if there's wind. That's why Archipilot has a wind estimator. So even if you don't have an airspeed, it can actually guesstimate your airspeed a bit. Simulators are great, but I suck on simulators. Like real aircraft is so much easier than simulators. Though I got to fly an F-35 simulator the other day at the air show with the Australian Air Force.
So was the real F-35 easier?
No, unfortunately not. They wouldn't let me do that. But
I had a really interesting
VR and everything, and that was actually quite good because the spatial awareness was there, and I actually found that much easier to fly than any other simulator I've played with. So yeah,
I can't do perception on simulators.
Well, yeah, I suppose. But I had a really interesting chat with, and I haven't released the video yet because with the CEO of DeFore last week, and the conversation I could see with his hands, he was flying their aircraft like he was using a collective. I could see he was doing it. So I was saying, is that the way? Are you planning on having your aircraft to be set up like a helicopter? And he said yes. And then he went through the different flight control systems. So jumping around here a little bit, but if you think of urban air mobility and all that sort of thing, we haven't even nailed down, well, what will UP mean? Because in the F-35, I can't remember what the controls do, but it's different to the Osprey and it's different to whatever.
They tip it on its nose when it lands.
Yeah, well, yeah, they do, and they bounce it along the thing. By the way, but but there's all sorts of trouble ahead for urban air mobility, just for that simple thing of, well, how are we going to control it? Are we going to have a unified standard? Helicopters have ended up all being the same, basically. The only difference is whether the cooling fan turns.
I mean, there's actually a significant difference in the types of helicopters and how they do things. I mean, the Aerospatiale is pretty cool. Aerospatiale is pretty cool in the way it does its rotor head with a composite head that flexes, and it's got X amount of life, and you just throw it out. There's no maintenance. There's no nothing. It's so bloody reliable.
No, but for the driver, the cooling fan's either going one way or the other way, so that just changes the way that your feet work. That's all. But the actual moving of the controls is the same.
And they all blow downwards.
And they all
just beat.
And when that one fan stops being powered, you just move the collective a little bit and keep flying, as opposed to when your 15 fans start doing random things, you got bad luck.
Now, a little advice for Mark: if you have trouble with depth perception, don't take up model submarines.
Now the sandbag story, I've told you this one before. There's a great pub in Wiltshire called the Barge at a village called Honey Street, and that is, if you go downstairs in the Barge, in the cellars, it's the graph paper for all the crop circles that are in the fields all around. Because if you map crop circles, they're around the pub in Avebury and they're around the Barge at Honey Street. I wonder what the connection could be. We stood outside. We used to fly our gliders on the hill above it, where one of the white horses is, and we stood out there may have had a couple of sweet sherries with our radio control transmitters, with all the tourists that are looking at things, and we just said, with the Pewsey Vale Amateur Submarine Club, we're just docking the things, so on and so forth.
I was fortunate to be in Avery when there was one of the more spectacular crop circles right next to that Hengie thing there, or nearby Avery, and That was actually pretty impressive, and they had some Americans there that were clearly UFO hunters, and they were out there with their Geiger counter and blah blah blah, and checking this, that, and the other. And
It's a couple of guys locally. It's a couple of local guys.
Used to, because that's when I was flying balloons there. So, of course, to go fly balloons, I'd have to be going off and driving off with the balloon at like before sunrise. And the number of times you come around the corner and there'd be a load of blokes who go, just walking in a lane with sticks, and then they put their heads down. And
I just like that the local church had a bin near the thing with donations for the vicar at the corner of the field, where everyone was walking through to have a look at this thing. And there's clearly this lovely track going up to it for everyone to walk up and have a look at the crop circle, and by donation. And so the local vicar was cashing in something chronic.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's the very one. I'd have to check it, but it's the few japes. And funny enough, a lot of so a lot of those people that were flying the model gliders then. They're all working. A lot of them are working in the drone industry now in various ways. We're talking many years ago. So it's they've become serious professionals. In fact, they're very good at camera gigs in the centre of London. Some of those clowns, but we flew all sorts of stuff there. And that was a nice way to bring back the UFO things into the story. Now, what have I forgotten? We've been going an hour and 20.
Lewis did ask you for an update on Harriers. So, the update on the Harrier for Louis is the one that we'll be flying is an actual 90 something model. It's pretty new. It's got very low hours on it, and it's 99 point something % together now. But because it's actually going to be doing flying, it's all being done by actual people with current aviation licenses. So I am no longer working on it because, well, I haven't worked in real aviation for a very long time now, so all my stuff's expired. But yeah, so I'm watching from the sidelines, excited to see that eventually Australia's going to have an effective VTOL Air Force in private hands. So yeah,
could use it as an air taxi.
Unfortunately, the free ride won't be happening because the two-seat one has some major structural problems that mean that the two-seat ones are only ever going to be ground run, which is.
Did you not watch that Schwarzenegger movie, or was it Bruce Willis, where they had one and that girl drops off? The guy, yeah, that's all you need, just some Velcro on the wings.
And that RG-Pilot Developer Conference is coming up week after next, I think.
It is. We actually have down here in the office here, we've got already, our first person turning up is from PX4, but anyway, and we've got a whole bunch of other RG-Pilot people coming tomorrow, and then we're all driving up to Canberra together on Monday, so that'll be good.
Eesh, that's a drive.
Lewis, are you coming to the conference? Anyway, we'll see if he answers. So that's going to be awesome. If any of you do get a chance to, quickly buy a ticket and drop down to Australia, it's going to be a really good conference because it's the first one we've had for ages. So everyone's really keen to catch up. The conference isn't until I think Friday next week, but we're all turning up Monday, Tuesday. So it's actually going to be pretty much a week long, just RG-Pilot Nerd Fest. It's going to be great. So, yeah.
And tell me, before we go, I'd like to know the price of that 4 GPS. That sounds super interesting.
We haven't released the price yet.
Okay.
Because we're at that stage where we have production is ticked to go, but we don't have prices back on a few of the things in bulk quantity, and we can't actually officially announce the product and all of its features until something else gets announced in May by one of the parts that's on it. So we have to be very careful about announcing things because the product hasn't actually been. The product that's in it hasn't been announced. So
we're not talking about it now.
No,
well, we can talk about. We can talk about it.
Hold on.
We just can't talk
Here's
about
my pen. Men in Black. Poof. Yeah, there you go.
Good done.
How's volatility with prices then on components like those? Is it all a bit more settled down?
No, it is and it isn't. We've finally got chips coming for Cube Oranges again. Obviously, we moved over to the Cube Orange Plus because we couldn't get the STM32s. We've finally got a source of that, but every month we're promised X number of chips and less turn up. So we're back to paying reasonable prices on those, but we can't build reasonable quantities, and so therefore our pricing is still stupid. So yeah, anyone that's saying that the chip shortage is over is kidding themselves, because there's still people hoarding stuff. That includes us. We hoarded a lot of
Pringles
things.
says it's over.
Yeah. What was that?
I think Pringles said it was over.
Yeah. So it's nice they let him out from the home, isn't it, to do this every week? Yeah, shame, man.
All right. Who's excited that Clarkson's Farm's having a Series 3?
I think that was inevitable. It's keeping Amazon going now, isn't it?
I just love that Amazon had announced that they were parting ways with him. And I think that was the best media stunt that they've done for a while. Yeah, and I hope his local council are shivering in their boots and, maybe announcing that they were parting ways was a way to get the council off their backs so they could actually film season 3. They may have done that in secret. So
it's pretty. I like it. But I don't think. What I want to say, the current food crisis they've got in the UK is completely because the British consumer doesn't really realise the value of the farmer's work. So it's going down the way of redressing that. But people still aren't wanting to accept food for the price they should be paying for it, to pay the farmers more. So
direct drone delivery from the farm gate, that's the future.
Yeah. Like convincing people to go to places like that and actually buy from those things, that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is the way forward, isn't it? And big ag is largely a lie, really, for what it does for everybody. And it's interesting to see that the ag drone side of things, mercifully, is moving away. Crop dusting is getting quite big. So there's even a lad in the village here with a flipping great Zag thing on the back of his pickup, completely illegally flying because of our rules and regulations here. But he's here doing it. He's using that Zag thing for crop. Oh, Mick, hello, Mick. What have you been servicing? I think Mick's on F-18 still, isn't he? I don't know what he's on these. Maybe the F-35. I don't know. And the show at Avalon, was it pretty amazing?
It
I've
was,
been there once years ago.
We gave away a lot of merch. So we had people walking around in our red tops to celebrate the release of Cube Red. So that was pretty cool. And it was a great show. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But then again, I'm an aeroplane nerd, so I always enjoy the air show. We had some fun with the Army drone racing team. We've actually got the Army drone racing team coming to our office soon, and we're going to be setting up a X-class drone with some really cool Currawong ESCs that are just magic, and a Cube Red, because obviously a racing drone needs a Cube Red.
Does it have air mode?
What's that?
Does the Cube Red have air mode?
Yes, of course it does.
Oh, good, excellent.
Yeah. We don't call it that.
No.
Well, Cool Cat's got some great. I love where he's talking about that. Is that the Avebury area and Pewsey area, if you're travelling in the UK, and Wiltshire. My father's from Wiltshire, but I was born in Somerset, which is much better. But anyway, no, it's a lovely area. It really is, and it's between sort of major-ish roads, so it's unspoiled. It's lovely. Love Wiltshire.
Yeah, there's not so many tourists go to those areas as well, which is strange, to be honest. But yeah,
I don't think many people from the UK particularly go into that area.
Yeah.
I suppose because most of it's Salisbury Plain danger areas. Most of it's bombed a lot. I suppose there is a little bit.
That was a great album.
There is a road with your surname in it too, as well.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a village there as well. Yeah, everything.
So you can actually see 3 horses from one spot, can't you? There's a spot you can go to, and you can see the 3 horses. because it's
Yeah.
quite
It's called a
strange.
stable.
It's called a stable. Yeah. That's right. We actually
there
turned
you
one.
go. Nick's on the P8.
P8 Poseidon. Oh, he's going
Yeah.
slowly now, mate.
No, it's not exactly that slow. It's
Well, I know, but
it's faster than the APC3 that it replaces. So yeah. And my link to that is I did worked on the weapons upgrade of the APC3, which I feel wasn't that long ago, but they've retired the aircraft, so apparently it was. So yeah.
Shackleton's was still in the Air Force when I was in. And
to answer Cliff's question earlier on, number 2 cutting compound and a chamois.
There you go. I was going to say Pantene. It doesn't happen overnight, and they promised me it will happen. I'm still waiting.
There's definitely time to go. Dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully the man from Manna will join us next week. He said he will. He'd forgotten he was going to Amsterdam. So I look forward to that. We'll quiz in some more. Wherever you are, be careful out there, and we'll see you next week, 2100 GMT. Cheers all. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.